So in today's lesson, you're going to be asked to solve some problems that involve volume, so word problems specifically. So in my experience, kids typically struggle with this because they see usually or often a lot of words and not a lot of just plain math. And so it may be helpful for you to have a bit of a system to help you get organized when you're solving your word problems so that it doesn't seem so overwhelming. So there are different methods. One method that is taught in math and in science is the GRASP method. Now you can use all of this, you can choose parts of it, use what you find helpful. But it may give you a strategy to help to get all the information that you need organized, and that will help you to get to your answer, to your solution. So the GRASP method involves a bunch of different steps. Each of the letters in the word grasp stands for a step or a process that you want to go through when you're solving a word problem. So the first, the G, stands for given. So in other words, what is given to you in the problem, right? So that might be some measurement information, that might be a diagram. Maybe you want to create a diagram, and that will be like one of the pieces of information being given to you, right? The R stands for required to find. So it's always important as one of your first steps to identify when you read a word problem what it is that the question is asking you to figure out. And it may be helpful for you to write that out, okay, so that you don't sort of lose track of where you're going with your solution. Okay. Analysis involves identifying, well, what am I actually doing here? Is there a specific formula that I'm supposed to use? So to me, analysis means, well, what tool am I using to solve the problem? The S stands for solution, and so, well, the solution is you figuring out the answer to the problem, okay? Being able to answer the question and figuring out what you're required to find. And so last but not least, in all word problems, what you want to do is make sure that the reader understands that you know what the answer means, right? So you're not just putting a number there without saying what its meaning is. And so you want to paraphrase, and all that is you're going to write out a quick sentence to indicate to the reader in words what it is that you've figured out. So what we're going to do next is we're going to look at a couple of examples, and I'll try to model as much as possible some of the elements of the GRASP method. Okay, so before you begin a word problem, it's important for you to read the question carefully. Every word matters. So take the time to make sure you fully understand what the question is asking you. So it may be, you may want to read it 2 or 3 times to be sure. Okay, so I'm going to read it. A volleyball just fits into a 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter cube box. What is the volume of air in the box that is not occupied by the ball? Okay, so one strategy that I use is that I use a highlighter. You can underline if you don't have a highlighter, or you can place a box around important information. So for instance, I'm looking at this 30 by 30 by 30 centimeter cube, and that seems like an important detail. Another piece of important detail is that the volleyball just fits into that cube. Okay, so that's going to be important because I can use that. Those are given pieces of information that I can use to create a diagram. The next part, what is the volume of air in the box that is not occupied by the ball? So that's really, you may want to underline that in a different color because that's actually what you're asked to find. What is the volume of air in the box not occupied by the ball? So let's start by drawing a diagram. Okay, so to me a diagram can be either part of your analysis. You can think of it as just writing out your givens in the question. I'm going to go ahead and do that by drawing a box that sort of hopefully will look like a cube. Okay, so much that last little bit there. Let me redo this a bit. So here's my box, and it's a perfect cube, and I know that it is 30 by 30 by 30, so that means it's 30 centimeters on this side, 30 centimeters along this side, and then 30 centimeters in height. Okay? Now the next thing they're telling me is that there's a volleyball that just fits into it. Okay, so if I were to draw a sphere, it would be just fitting in that box. Okay, so that doesn't tell me any information specifically, but I'm going to have to rely on logic to help me figure out what that actually is giving me, what information that is giving me. Okay, so the next part is, so we've talked about what is given, we've talked about what we're required to find. Okay, so we're required to find the volume of air in the box that is not occupied by the ball. Okay, so I'm going to write that out just in a math sentence. So the volume of air, and I don't know that. Okay, so now I can think about, well, how am I going to figure that out? Well, thinking logically, we've probably all put something in a box before that might not fully fit in the box. So what we're really trying to find here is the air between the box itself and the ball. So I know that if I know the volume of the box itself, and I take away the volume of the ball, then the leftover will be the volume of air. Okay, so that's my analysis. That's, how I'm going to go about figuring this out. Okay, so now I'm ready to go ahead and find my solution. So my solution is the S part in GRASP. So I need to first figure out the volume of the box and then figure out the volume of the ball. I could do that all in one step, but I'm going to choose to separate that. So the volume of the box. Well, I know that the box is a perfect cube and that it's a rectangular prism. And so its volume can be calculated by saying, well, it's length times width times height. And so that's just 30 times 30 times 30. And so when I work that out, that is going to give me 27,000 cubic centimeters. Okay, so there, I figured out the volume of my box, this little piece in there. So if I want to, I can right away go and plug that in, or I can save that till later. So 27,000 square centimeters, cubic centimeters. Okay, so there's that little bit. Now what I can do next is I can find the volume of the ball itself. Okay, so the volume of the ball, I'm going to get rid of some of this because it's getting a little crowded. Next, I want to find the volume of the ball. Okay, so the ball, I'm going to assume is a perfect sphere. And so the formula for the volume of a ball is, as you may remember from previous classes, is 4/3 pi r cubed. So the question here is, well, I need to know what the radius of this ball is, right? And so I have to make a few assumptions here. Sometimes there are some assumptions that you need to make. If I were to look at this ball, I know that it just fits. It just fits in this box, right? Okay, it just fits. And so that tells me that the diameter of the sphere has to be the same as the width of the box itself. So my diameter is actually 30. So if my diameter is 30 centimeters, and I know that my radius is always half of the diameter, the radius is going to be 15 centimeters. So let's go ahead and solve for that. So 4/3, 4 divided by 3 times pi, and then I'm going to cube the 15. So 15 cubed And that should give me the volume of my ball. 4 divided by 3, just typing this into my calculator, times whatever pi is, using my pi button, times 15 to the power of 3. And I'm getting that works out to be 14,137 cubic centimeters, approximately. And so I'm going to go ahead and substitute that value into the volume of the ball, because the difference between them again is going to give me the air that remains. So I'm actually very, very close to being done my solution here. So I'm going to subtract the volume of the ball from the volume of the box, and that gives me approximately 12,863 cubic centimeters. It doesn't tell me where to round. I'm just going to round to the nearest whole. If the question specified, you would probably want to do that and round it to the proper number of digits. In this case, they don't tell me. So now I figured out my answer. I just want to make sure that the reader knows that I understand what my answer means, and so I'm going to paraphrase. That's the P part of the grasp method. So I'm going to say therefore. Okay, and this is these 3 dots are a quick way in math as a short form for therefore. So therefore, the volume of air remaining in the box is 12,863 cubic centimeters. And now I've done. I've paraphrased and I've finished. There's a complete solution.